Hey guys, this is Andy with Troglodyne, here with George, of course, as always. Today we're going to be doing part of a two-part series. The first one is Codes of Coercion, and the second one tomorrow is going to be Codes of Comfort, where we're going to be talking about how, if you're running a business, especially like software businesses, that sort of thing, you can really go overboard with a whole bunch of requirements that you give people, and how this sort of thing can hurt your company or any sort of potential benefits that could come to your company, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, normally they're called codes of conduct, or in some ways they're employee handbook things, or they're like core values, things like that. And they always sort of rub me the wrong way, especially when they're sort of a mandatory kind of thing where if you don't sign the update to the employee manual, it's implied that you're going to get the boot, right? Which means that essentially it's like we're changing company culture because we feel like it and there's nothing you can do about it. And you're basically coerced into agreeing whether you actually agree or not. And so then anytime anybody actually violates the updated code of conduct, essentially, or even the original code of conduct as imposed, then basically you have two options as an employee. Number one, be agree with it in the first place and not have any problem, or B, claim to agree with it but don't actually agree with it, right? Be inauthentic, as they might say. But the problem with that is, due to the taint of coercion, the fact that you are literally forced to do this, either case could actually, just with suspicious behavior, which might actually be innocuous unless viewed
Or
by the
a guy
paranoid,
under stress or something like that.
yeah, could be perceived as being inauthentic. And a lot of times that's all it takes to actually get somebody fired over basically nothing.
Oh yeah, and especially if you have some people that are good at expressing dark triad traits, that sort of thing, those types are going to be the type that you never suspect are being inauthentic, but can be completely inauthentic. And yet, people that do not have those sorts of traits, say they're having a bad day, something like that, they can make you seriously doubt their sincerity for any sort of belief, just because they're having a bad day and, they're an emotional train wreck,
Yeah.
something like that. So, it really makes it to where guessing someone's authenticity based on some sort of policy up at work and whether they believe it, and that you as a manager, like, basing whether you should fire a guy or hire a guy on this authenticity is really something that you should think twice about.
Yeah, because number one, nobody reads minds, right? And, just number two, there's always the exception that proves the rule, right? And so that, I think, is why I just generally regard the idea of having them being mandatory is just generally harmful. And a lot of that has to do also with um, sort of the fact that you can't uh, really do a lot of things that you could otherwise if you didn't have this in place. For example, it's just sort of like a chilling effect a lot of times you have on even innocuous stuff like code reviews. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in the next review, in the next video, sorry, about sort of how, especially if the content of the code of conduct is more comfort based, this sort of mandate can actually build a sort of complex in people where they don't actually speak up when they easily could speak up and not even offend anybody.
Right, and that kind of goes into what I was about to talk about, which is that inauthenticity is actually something you shouldn't worry about, because guess what? You have to be inauthentic if you want to learn properly. Because how do you go from somebody that has less experience to someone that has more? At some level, you have to believe that you can get better, that there's actually potential here. And the way that we do that is through self-deception.
Yeah, at what point
you literally have to, like, even if it's not true, you have to fake it until you make it.
Yeah, I can't tell you what point in my life specifically that I actually authentically became a Perl software developer. There's no day, there's no minute, there's no hour that it actually happened. It just sort of happened, right?
Yeah, I mean, for quite some time, we were testers.
Yeah.
And, being a tester is like you don't really think of yourself as a developer because for the most part, even if you're using code to say test other code, for the most part, you're focused on savaging the results of your test. The system under test, that sort of thing. Your focus is entirely different, so you never even think of yourself as a developer.
Yeah, until it's too late.
Right.
So, anyways, the thing that sort of brought up all this was an extension of sort of the Coinbase drama that happened, but this one is a bit more fraught because it's a bit more of a obvious case. The New Relic situation where the CEO is obviously supporting, highly Christian and somewhat anti-LGBTQ causes and so forth, but then still having a very LGBTQ-friendly hiring policy. And all I would say to that is that it's one of those things. I don't like that this allowed cognitive dissonance to creep in, okay? Being forced to have this stated policy is essentially why this is a problem at all. If it had been an unstated policy to hire LGBTQ, even if he was this Christian guy, and he did this anyways because, well, I mean, a lot of Christians focus on forgiveness. There could be a myriad of reasons, right? Or he just wants the talent pool. Who cares?
Yeah.
But the point is, the fact that he focuses on this gives people a route for cognitive dissonance to creep in. It causes dissension amongst the ranks when the fact is, if you had just not publicized this at all and just kept it on the DL, there wouldn't have been any problem whatsoever, right?
Well, and more importantly, it points to kind of a lack of damage control thinking as it regards the CEO and his stance and that sort of thing as to why it's becoming more of a kerfluffle. Because generally, you can talk about these things when cognitive dissonance strikes to explain why you, like say as the CEO, don't have cognitive dissonance about hiring this way if your beliefs are this way. Like, at the very least, you can, properly expound your position. Even if people don't agree with it, you can at least explain it in a way that dispels the cognitive dissonance and leads the average employee not to think something smells weird here, and instead either thinks, well, I disagree with him, whatever, or he's got a point, kind of.
And that's sort of another topic we're going to talk in the next video about, the whole codes of comfort. Essentially, it's the idea of building comfort with your COC. A lot of times it goes overboard and actually creates cognitive dissonance, which is the opposite of comfort, right? Because it tries to nail things down too much. It tries to make too much concrete. And I think a lot of the reason for that is because of the legal environment, which is the core of coercion. That's why they're publicizing their LGBTQ friendly hiring policy is generally
it's a bit of a waterfall from government down into the corporate stack, where in general you want to be favoring favored classes of people, if that's the case, or you want to look as if you're not discriminating against them on the other side of things. There's a myriad reasons for that sort of codification of that, but it's also, again, we've been pointing out the problems with that.
Yeah, and the trouble is, to me, that when you really think about the way society's gone and how general opinion has changed at this point, I mean, certainly a lot of mandatory things in these regards are not even necessary. Just by the reasonable man standard, I would say the sort of LGBTQ and minority-friendly hiring policies are literally like mainstream opinion. You don't even have to mandate this stuff anymore, right?
No, yeah.
So that, to me, I think is actually now becoming harmful, because all it is doing is allowing people to have cognitive dissonance about how they run their business creep in, which I think that was actually the whole purpose of the legislation in the first place, was actually to help businessmen and get over the exact opposite sort of cognitive dissonance,
Right.
When they were when they were reaching out their olive branch and taking chances on these people who were not, normally supposed to in polite society. You were not supposed to do that, but this was how they were able to get that extra talent pool and all those sorts of things, and they used the law as a stick to make it happen. But now it's the problem. The shoe is on the other foot, and the problem is on the other side.
Yeah.
Well, So I hope that that sort of gives you a hint as to what I think the real solution with regard to your COCs and things like that, and how you can still run your business and have culture and have reasonable standards. It's one of those things. You have to keep it within what is considered reasonable, just from a point of view of like the court's reasonable man standard. This will be helpful to you in that it will reduce your legal costs, number one, because, and number two, you won't actually do anything to extreme and out of step, because if you have to codify it, that necessarily implies that, if it had to be codified, then that means it was probably not reasonable at one point or another. Right?
Well, and most importantly, if you're going to be doing something to gain convergence with law and that sort of thing to get you into a better place with the legal environment, then there's no reason really to codify it, because you can achieve the same result de facto, if not de jure, just by literally hiring practices. Like, your managers just do the right thing, so to speak.
Yeah, it's so much easier when you don't need a COC. And that's sort of what you actually want in your organization in the first place, is to everybody just get it in the first place.
Right.
That's how you get the kind of synergy people actually want in an organization in the first place.
Well, and any programmer should understand this sort of concept very easily. The best algorithm is the one where, you already know the answer.
Yeah, it's called the God algorithm, because God already knows everything.
Yeah. So, if you can arrange your things and think about hiring practices, management practices, that sort of thing,
and filtering for the right
mindsets.
Yeah.
Yep. Then you don't have to worry about these sorts of things.
Yeah, it'll just automatically take care of itself. And that's the biggest problem with these things. I think it's a crutch people are using to deal with the fact that they don't know how to grow and keep their culture intact, right?
Well, and a lot of this deals with what we're going to be going into in the next video, which is codes of comfort, because a lot of times people don't want to get into these uncomfortable situations where they see someone that has a bad attitude, but they can't get rid of them. And because they're either too cowardly to do it, or they don't know a way to do it within the law in their state, or they don't think they can do, or they're too afraid to just cashier them regardless of the consequences. They draw unemployment, something like that. And what I will say about that is usually the fear of loss is usually overblown in that case, because you're going to lose a lot worse if you keep an employee with a bad attitude than if you just cashier him.
Oh yeah, they're horribly corrosive, especially when they stick around for multiple years and everybody else looks at the example and they say, wait, this piece of dead wood has been sticking around here for years and I've been working my butt off and this guy's been doing nothing? What am I doing?
Well, and there's examples of that, whether it's someone that's, either part of the majority of people that work at your firm, a minority, any sort of protected class. This is not something that is unique to any one particular person. Anyone can get a bad attitude.
Yeah, and the biggest problem is when it would cause face to be lost with management whenever they would actually be fired. E.g., they're either liked by the manager or there's some other complication that makes it to where you would still lose face as a firm firing them. E.g., they've got lots of social media clout, and for better or worse, something like that.
Yeah,
there's lots of reasons why you might not want to fire someone after that, but those kind of headaches are, thank God, pretty rare, right? And you can totally avoid them so long as you actually filter, especially for your management, to make sure they have mindset. And the people who you interview, you are making sure that they are laser focused on mindset.
Which, again,
guys have that.
Is another thing. Next video, y'all guys are going to have to watch, because the key way to do this does not involve comfort, and it's during the interview.
Yeah, it's discomfort, because that's where the magic happens, folks. All right, well, that's a good way to leave it off. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. We'll see you guys next time. Hit the like and subscribe button. We'll see you later.